Welcome everyone. Good morning in Brazil and good afternoon to everyone in Switzerland. We are very pleased to start our webinar on urban living, climate change, sustainability, the future of our cities. I'm Gabriela Devaux, architect and project manager at Swissnex in Brazil, and I want to share some information about this webinar with you. Quickly in Portuguese, este webinar será em inglês com tradução simultânea para o português. Para isso, clique no ícone interpretação localizado na barra do menu de sua tela, no Zoom, e opte pela sua opção linguística. Também sugiro que selecione a opção desligar o áudio original para maior clareza do som. Façam suas perguntas na aba do Q&A, informando quem vocês gostariam que respondesse, e iremos direcionar as perguntas na segunda parte do evento, onde teremos a oportunidade de trocar com todos. Reforço que o chat é uma oportunidade de entrar em contato com quem tem interesse em comum, uma ótima oportunidade de networking online também. Então, fique à vontade para se apresentar e trocarem contatos. This webinar, então vou passar em inglês agora. This webinar will be presented in English with simultaneous translation to Portuguese. To access the translation, just click on the interpretation icon located in the menu bar on the bottom of your screen and choose the language option. Please ask your question through the Q&A box and enjoy some networking opportunity in the chat box. So the Swissnex is an initiative of the Swiss State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation in collaboration with the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs. The Swissnet network promotes collaboration between Switzerland and other countries in science, education, and innovation. And one way to connect scientists, researchers, entrepreneurs, and inspirational minds is to organize events like this one. This webinar is an initiative in the context of the 27th World Congress of Architects, UIA 21 TU, that has taken a digital format due to the public health restriction. Swissnex has been organizing events on architecture and urban planning this year and the last, and they are all available for you on our website, so go check it out. Today, this series of urban living investigation continues, and we will look in particular at how climate change and sustainability, sustainable solutions are shaping the future of urbanism, and which are the innovative tools and how can they be implemented. To answer these questions, Swissnex in Brazil is very happy to present Frederic Dreyer from the EPFL, Thiago Hérick de Sá from the World Health Organization, and Sara Lopes de Moraes, PhD candidate from the University of São Paulo. We have as well the pleasure to have Anna Karla Almeida to moderate this dialogue. She is PhD candidate at the EPFL at the Laboratory of Urbanism and in the executive committee of the Habitat Research Center of ENAC EPFL, and partner to this series of investigation here at Swissnex. Welcome, Anna. It's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, Gabriela. Welcome to everyone, and bom dia, boa tarde para todos. Welcome to all your panelists and our audience. I'm very glad to be with you for this fundamental discussion that can be a bridge for the practices and ideas between Switzerland and Brazil for the future of our cities. So climate change is a great challenge. The moment to discuss these issues is now, because we are going through a period of urbanization and transition. So how can mitigate the issues of climate change and find sustainable tools for action? What are the impacts of climate change, and how can we apply for these tools and create the change that we need for the future of our cities? So after hosting events about the impact of the pandemic on architecture and the future of the cities, and then looking into the urban living and the mobility and health of the city, now we would like to go further and speak about climate change impacts on our grids, about sustainable ways of living, and how this impacts in the health of a community impacts today and tomorrow. So we are looking for new technologies, systems, ways of planning and dealing with the habit change in order to apply new formats in a short time to create a huge change. The heart of the matter is the ecological transition of our cities are experiencing, and what are the strategies to mitigate and, of course, anticipate the impact of the Anthropocene era on our natural and built environment. So I hope that all you enjoy the presentations, and we will open for questions and a debate at the end. So as Gabriela already explained, this webinar will work as follows. We will have 3 presentations, about 10 minutes each, and all with simultaneous translation to Portuguese. And at the end, we will have a question time for our speakers of more or less 20 minutes. So I would like to introduce Sara, that we will start the presentation with her. And Sara Moraes is a PhD candidate of the University of São Paulo, in which she's financially supported by the São Paulo Research Foundation, FAPESP. Sara is interested in the impacts of climate change, particularly in health and in cities. Her PhD thesis covers the effects of extreme air temperatures events on mortality at the built environment, socioeconomic factors, and urban climate. Sara, the floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I want to thank Gabriela, Anna, and Swissnex Brazil for having me today to talk and discuss about this important topic about urban living, climate change, sustainability, and the future of our cities. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about extreme weather events and how these extreme events can affect human health, our quality of life in cities. And I'm going to introduce you some urban planning measures that can reduce and mitigate the impacts of heat events in our cities. So first, we need to discuss a little bit how climate change is working and how these extreme weather events are occurring. So extreme weather events such as heat waves, cold spells, floods have always occurred worldwide. However, in the past few decades, the occurrence of these extreme air temperature events, such as cold and heat, has increased because of the climate change scenario. Generally, the extreme air temperature events are defined as a period of extremely high or low temperatures outside the normal range, which lasts for some consecutive days. According to several studies, extreme air temperature events will become longer, frequent, and intense in the near future, especially the events related to heat. So a few weeks ago, we saw on the news that a very severe and intense heat wave occurred in Canada and part of the United States. Unfortunately, Canadian authorities said that at least 500 people died because of a heat wave, and most of those people were vulnerable. Most of them were elderly, living alone. And at the same time, we had an extreme cold event happening in South America, in some parts of southwest of Brazil. The intensity and duration of the heat waves and cold spells have become a major public health problem because these events can increase the mortality and morbidity risk. For instance, heat waves can increase the mortality from cardiovascular, respiratory disease, A recent study shows that the increase in the mortality related to heat waves is projected to be higher in Brazil than US and European countries if we didn't take any mitigation or urban planning measures to reduce this intensity of heat waves. In my PhD thesis, me and my supervisors, we could check that heat wave events are related to an increase of elderly mortality in São Paulo. We could check that the highest risk of elderly mortality happens when we have an intense heat wave event for longer days. So in this graph, we can see represented by each symbol a definition of heat wave. So on the circle, we can see that the heat waves that were more intense and longer caused a higher risk of cardiovascular disease death. We also found that men are more vulnerable to die from stroke than women. And another study conducted here in São Paulo and thinking about the association between heat waves and the spatial analysis, we could find that when we have a heat wave event, we have clusters or a high risk of mortality from stroke and ischemic heart disease. And what that means? This means we found a spatial pattern that is related to heat wave events. And that means that our elderly are not equally vulnerable in São Paulo's territory. But how can we explain this association then between heat waves and the higher risk of mortality in São Paulo? We can associate the higher risk of mortality in heat waves considering multiple factors to explain this association. So we need to consider individual factors such as age, comorbidities, and individual behaviors. The socioeconomic context is also important because income, education, poverty, and segregation plays a very important role between this association. And of course, the urban environment, which includes air pollution, urban heat island, and the built environment. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of the socioeconomic context and how the urban environment are associated with these risk factors between heat waves and death in São Paulo. So São Paulo shows to us in these maps represent a very high levels of social inequality. And on the map of the GIS index, we can see that the spatial pattern in São Paulo is different. So we can see on the in the green areas that a better condition of socioeconomic context. In the red and orange areas, we can find more vulnerable places for living. We can also see on the map on the right, clusters of deaths from cardiovascular disease. The pattern seems to be the same, or it is connected to the GIS index. Then we can see that diseases are very connected to the socioeconomic context. São Paulo also shows high levels of segregations. We can see in the best areas for living, we can see more areas that are comfortable. The built environment is kind of different than the areas that are more vulnerable. So in São Paulo, more than 2 million people live in slums and under inequality household sanitation conditions. And this is linked to the higher risk of mortality that's during heat waves, because the built environment, the house quality, is linked to the thermal comfort. For instance, we have a city with a lot of concrete, asphalt, poor household conditions. The people will feel more exposed to heat, and then can and this can increase the risk of mortality. So when we are talking about the future of our cities, we needed to consider it to improve the household conditions, the sanitations, and the built environment. So taking these in these considerations, I'm going to point out some infrastructures improvement that can help our quality of life, and how this can reduce our mortality risk. So thinking about that, our good alternative for this is emergency cooling. The Canadian government, during the heat waves, they built some emergency cooling centers that can help people to go there and feel better. But we can also think about to expand green areas and parks to reduce the heat impact on our cities. Vegetation is very important, because when we have a lot of concrete, asphalt, this impacts directly on the urban heat island. And this condition gets even worse when an extreme weather event is happening, because the surface of concrete asphalt, they captures a lot of heat, and this increases our feeling, and this increases towards our feeling to the thermal comfort environment. So to think in a good measure to reduce this association between heat events and deaths, we need to consider it immediate. The expansions of green areas and parks. And of course, thinking about the situation, this association, we need to educate our population, create our warning systems, and of course, improve our built environments to increase our quality of life in cities. This is just a few examples that we need to consider for the future of our cities, of course. And of course, I said the relationships between these events and the impacts on health. Of course, many measures can be considered if we consider another types of extreme events and the climate change scenario. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sara, for your speech, which points out the dangers that climate change is already influencing public health. But the interesting is that it is not alone the cause of mortality, right? Because also socioeconomic and environmental causes are intertwined with the quality of health in a metropolis like São Paulo. So I believe that infrastructure improvements and also public measures are needed to reduce heat impact of our cities. So thank you so much for your presentation. Now I ask for Thiago de Sá, to present. But before, I will make a small introduction because Dr. Thiago de Sá is a public health professional working with health, urban environment, and sustainable mobility issues at the Department of Environment, Climate Change, and Health of the World Health Organization headquarters. So his most recent work includes the Adapting for Global Use, the Health and Economic Assessment for Walking and Cycling tool, as well the supporting the development of the World Health Organization, and also with the Urban Health Research Agenda that the World Health Organization have an initiative. Previously, Dr. de Sá worked as a researcher in urban health and environmental epidemiology with a track record of publications in several academic journals. And Dr. de Sá holds a master's degree and a PhD in public health from the University of São Paulo, Brazil. So Thiago, it's a pleasure to see you again, and the floor is yours.
Anna, many thanks, and thank you for the Swissnex, the panel colleagues for exchanging and sharing this time. And it's a great pleasure, amazing opportunity to be here with you today and share some time with the participants as well to discuss the future of our cities. Considering the topics for today's discussion, I would like to focus my presentation today on the role of the urban environment to protect and promote human and planetary health, the unique opportunity window for concerted action able to address several of the pressing agendas efficiently. And you've just seen in Sara's presentation on some of the critical aspects that are on the agenda of today's world, from climate change to environmental degradation and many others. And also the need for a systemic response to ensure healthy urban environments for all. And I would like to start, colleagues, to go through some of the perhaps very basic questions we should be asking ourselves when aiming to shape urban environments for that purpose. Most of my slides will be structured as you see here, and also with a suggested tool or guidance for those interested to dig deeper in that particular subject.
Thiago, just a second. Your presentation is not full screen.
Now you can see the full screen.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect, colleagues. Apologies for that. So as I was saying, I'm going to structure my presentation and most of my slides, as you see here, with some guidance at the left bottom corner for those interested to dig deeper. But I would like to start this conversation, perhaps going back to some of the basics. The basics on, for example, why transforming urban environments for the future of our cities? What is the justification for us to do so? And I could think of at least 4 reasons why we should be doing this. The first one is certainly because urban environments shapes the quality of life and the options we have or don't have in our daily living, from the commuting choices we have to the safety we experience while crossing the street, such as the lady in the photo, to the food environment we have around us. It also impacts on the quality and safety of many of our basic collective assets, and temperature is one of them that has just been highlighted in the previous presentation, but also the space we share, the air we breathe, and the water we drink. Urban environments, they also mediate our relationship with nature in many ways, and it influences the benefits we may or may not acquire, for example, from urban ecosystem services, from green and blue spaces. And as you can see in this picture of the beautiful city of Rio de Janeiro, neither those living down there nor those living up here are fully benefiting from the ecosystem services. But certainly those living up here have much less from that. Not even the view from the sea they can afford to have. Well, and a final justification is ultimately, because in the end, urban environments contribute to determine the health and well-being of all living beings in this planet. Not only for this, but also for future generations. There is a generational justice dimension related to the transformation of the urban environments. Now, a second question we could pose to ourselves is, what for? What is the goal? What is the aim for transforming urban environments? The first one I would like to highlight is certainly that urban environments can enable us to address and respond to social, economic, environmental determinants of health and well-being that can be modified. And this is important because by definition, urban environments are human-made, therefore modifiable. It can also be used to enable flourishing, vibrant communities and a fulfilling life across generations, as is nicely laid out in WHO's Global Strategy on Health, Environment, and Climate Change, which I invite you all to have a look at. A third strong goal that we can have for addressing better urban environments is to prepare and respond to many concomitant global health challenges that we face today, from COVID-19 to the NCD pandemics, and also to the mental health crisis, which has been even deepened given the COVID-19 situation. And the fourth important reason or objective that we could have by transforming urban environments for the better future of our cities is to prepare and respond to climate change and global environmental degradation, which is at the core of today's discussion. We are reaching the boundaries of our planet in many ways, and at the same time, we cannot afford tackling them one by one. So having a systemic approach for addressing these global challenges should be one of the main goals for addressing urban environments that are better for health and well-being. Now, we quickly went through some of the justifications and some of the potential goals for that. But if we are to do this, who is doing this then? Who transforms the urban environment? I think that we should not take for granted that urban environments are a result of the competing forces that are trying to shape its form and functioning. And it's fair to say that most of urban environments of today are not necessarily benefiting everyone. So while we should benefit the whole society, we should obsessively try and bridge the inequity gap here, not only in terms of the benefits that we could achieve by transforming urban environments, but also through the active participation in planning, implementation, and monitoring the changes from all those that you see in this slide. There's an important role as well of local authorities, policymakers, and communities, because they know more about the local context, which is precisely where policy meets people. It is imperative that we have experts, practitioners, urban planners, public health professionals, architects working closely together to make sure that we have this transformation as a collective exercise, as a co-production of our space, changing the governance structures that will also allow us to do so, changing the way we do capacity building activities to bring these different expertises together. A fourth group that I would like to highlight here are certainly the health professionals and the broader health community. We at WHO continue to work to ensure that the healthcare workers and the broader health community are closely involved in this process, not only as advocates, but also as active participants, contributing with their expertise to this transformation. Now, the last question I would like to pose here, and I have some ways to address it, is on the hows. So how could we then transform the urban environments for a better future for our cities, addressing climate change and sustainability issues? The first one would be to improve the knowledge base. We need to know more on the links between urban environments and health and well-being, but in particular on what works, which interventions would be more successful in delivering this. The second aspect are the governance mechanisms and the implementation frameworks that we should have in place to maximize local participation and local leadership. And we have some very interesting examples, such as the ones from WHO's Urban Health Initiative, which I'll be more than happy to share bilaterally or as part of the discussion today. The third way that we could have to transform the urban environment to address concomitantly all those global challenges are by making the best use of the existing tools and guidance that we have already produced as this broader health and planning community. We don't need to start from scratch. We have a lot of guidance and case studies and good examples for us to start from. I think here is really connecting the dots and making best use of what we have already developed for this transformation, including, for example, making best use of data and analytical applications to plan and track progress. And for those interested in land use and walking and cycling sustainable mobility, I'm very glad to tell you that WHO is completing the adaptation of the health and economic assessment tool for walking and cycling, with the global version to be released later this year. And then a final way that I strongly believe we should be doing this transformation is by building alliances. And this event is just one more excellent opportunity for us to do so. And in that, I invite us all to think of health not just as a consequence, as an outcome of what we do or don't do with our urban environments, but also as a fundamental input throughout this development process. So let's build alliances, and let's, by doing that, build a healthier and more sustainable cities for everyone today and tomorrow. With this, I would like to end my contribution, and I very much look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thiago. What a nice presentation, because as you said, you are connecting the dots because as you said in the beginning, urban health shapes the quality of life that we have in our cities. So very interesting also, because you take attention to that the health as a quality is not only for humans, but for our environment. That is a very important way to think about sustainability and climate change, not centered in the human being, but thinking in the ecosystems that we have, and thinking about the transition that we are passing, and also the actors that we have to make this change. Because this close involvement of local authorities, health experts, health professionals, practitioners, urban planners, architects, and bring all this expertise together, it's a very nice way to build an alliances. And very nice presentation. Thank you so much, Thiago. I think that we have a nice flow here with the presentation of Sara and then Thiago. And last but not least, I will invite Frederic Dreyer. Frederic, hi Frederic. Happy to have you here with us today. And Frederic is the cluster manager for digitalization, the digitalization of infrastructure and cities at EPFL and NAC faculty. And he's passionate about ecosystems, and Frederic focuses his various activities around this theme. Frederic is graduate in engineering for the University of Lyon, and he received his PhD at EPFL, followed by MBA at University of Geneva. Frederic Dreyer is a serial entrepreneur, and he founded and accompanied multiple companies while working in the watch industry for about 10 years, before then turning into the public and the political sector. He is a founder of a FUSTIC association that is dedicated to the future of sustainable cities and territories. The floor is yours, Frederic.
Thank you, Anna. It's really my pleasure to be there. So you will see that I've got a typical French accent, different from the Portuguese one. But I'm really happy to be there, and many thanks to Swissnex Brazil to host me today and to get the opportunity to present some concrete project and activities at EPFL, so the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. Just a short notice about who we are. So EPFL, so we are the ANAC faculty. This faculty is divided in 3 sections, one linked to architecture, civil engineering, and environment. And it's really a melting point of different expertise from sociologists, from architectures, and for sure some scientists in different environmental ecosystems. The faculty is, I will say, made of more than 70 research units, approximately 600 researchers, and we are split in 3 campus, one in Lausanne, one in Freiburg with the Smart Living Lab Center, and also in the Valais with Alpol Center Research. ENAC is really, the faculty is really leading the faculty of addressing all the topics linked to sustainability challenges in the build on natural environment. And our play role at the faculty is really to boost interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity research with external partners of the academic sectors. And for sure, is one also of our play role is really to innovate and also to bring educational excellence to the new generation of students in the pipeline. The 3 main challenges for the next 4 years are linked to the climate change, digitalization, and urbanization. And you will see in a few seconds which kind of activities and concrete projects we are now setting and putting on the table for the next years. Just to explain the environment of the faculty at the EPFL, we are linked to several centers. And perhaps you know the first one is linked to HRC, to Habitat Research Centers, where Anna Karla is one of the collaborators there and active in the field of urbanization. We have other centers linked to, for example, climate, and we have a new center since early this year called Climate for Climate Change. It's a joint venture, I will say, collaboration between the EPFL and the University of Lausanne. On top of that, we have decided few months ago to create an association called FewStick, and you will see in a few seconds the payroll of this association. And the idea is really to bring and to set up the bridges with external stakeholders. And just to take the words of Thiago, it's really to connect the dots with different parts of expertise all around Switzerland and internationally. The value proposition of the faculty is really to contribute to this new definition of cities and territories and to bring this transition actively on concrete cases on the economical and political sectors with scientific impact, bringing awareness and for sure a knowledge transfer to the society. Now I will come more in details about this association FewStick, and to give the concrete example with one project we have now in the pipeline. So FewStick is a non-profit association, and FewStick is for future sustainable territories, infrastructures, and cities. You have to imagine that we considered perhaps in the right or wrong way, but it's like a Russian dolls, and you have for sure territories, but inside the territories you have the cities. Inside the cities, you have infrastructures, but on the middle of everything, you have the citizenship. And it's really important to consider citizens are really on the key fact, on the key actors of this future of the cities. I just want to show you a short video with some key facts, I will say. Perhaps, as you know, today, half of humanity lives in the cities. 70 million people migrate to the cities each year, and by 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in these cities. Cities consume more than 80% of the world resources on energy and produce most of the waste worldwide. Cities are also responsible of 70% of the world's greenhouse gas emission. And climate change undermines resilience and disrupts lives in the cities. Each year, more than 3 million people die of disease triggered by air pollution. But I will say, in an optimistic way, cities are also a hub of innovation and opportunities for the future. By 2050, cities will account more than 88% of the global GDP, and digitalization will reinvent the future of the cities. In order to leave no one behind that, a human-centered design of infrastructures and technology must guide smart cities efforts. To make cities more inclusive and sustainable and resilient, we need to think more locally. just as an image, I want to say that the 2030 agenda linked to the SDGs couldn't be achieved and reached without local action in our cities. So that's why we decided to set up this association funded and hosted at EPFL. And there you have an extract of the trade register, we say the status, but the payroll of the association is really to bring awareness, so to put an highlight of what are now the state of the art of the research, or to promote new technologies, new innovation in the frame of these infrastructure cities and territories. And the goal of this association is really to work in collective intelligence, as Thiago said, to connect the dots and to work in a project mode, to co-create together desirable futures and to set up feasibility study, proof of concept, minimal viable product and new best practices to have an impact on our society and to have a positive impact for our planet, I will say. The concept is quite simple, is really to work on cross-organizational, I will say, connections, so collective intelligence, connecting the dots, as Thiago said before, to support digital technology and innovative best practices with an impact for urban development and climate change for a better and sustainable future. When I'm talking about this, I will say digitalization, the idea is really to unlock the potential and the full potential of digitalization. Now we are talking about new technology like the blockchain, like artificial intelligence, building information modeling, digital twins. The idea is really to inspire to the community of public and private sectors and academics, what are the impact of such technology for a better future. So the idea is really to connect the dots and to have an unifying, I will say, ecosystem. As Thiago said again, and also Anna Karla told that properly, the idea is really to connect the dots between industries, governments, regulators, citizens, and academic sectors to drive this deployment of new technology, new best practices, and to get a better impact. The idea is also to connect the dots between the physical and digital world, because now we are living in more and more important digital, I will say, environment, to inspire a culture of innovation and to transform ideas into concrete projects. How we can unlock this potential, again, it's quite obvious, but the idea when we are talking about digitalization only tools, we are talking about digital tools, and these tools need to be linked to applications fields, from tourism, from public health, from construction, communication, from nature, biodiversity, on all this technology leading by specific applications will drive to new business model, new technology, and new, I will say, best practices. Again, as we said in communication, repetition is reputation, but again, it's linked to cooperation and interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity project teams. What we will want to bring in this association is really to connect also the dots between different topics, because as we said, it's not, we couldn't talk about urban health without talking about climate change, or about water energy nexus, or water edge neutral energy or mobility. It's really, we want to break the silos and to work with this intricate between the different topics, and to use, as you can see on the satellite on the slide, to use different digital tools like digital twin, blockchain. For example, can we set up some blockchain passport for the cities to know better with transparency what happened in the change of the cities? Can we use all the data produced by the cities, and especially by smart cities, in order to treat and to analyze this data in order to produce more predictive or prescriptive models, and to help the public sectors and the politics to take better decisions for the future? Again, as a satellite, there is an impact, because we couldn't talk about digitalization without assess what is the impact for the sustainability and the development of the society. That's why it's really important to have some life cycle assessment and to measure the impact of this digitalization on urban health, of the futures of the city. What is the impact of the quality of the life being, on biodiversity, on sociology, and so on. So that's why it's really important for us to manage and to balance the impact between each action we want to set up in this association. And now I want to come just on a concrete project now set up at the ENAC faculty. leading by the faculty on some laboratories called the Blue City Project. The idea of the Blue City is really the blue economy and to work properly in a circular economy. And the idea, it's a 4-year project, more than 5 million, leading by academics for sure, but we have a huge consortium of public and private sectors from Swiss, I will say, partners. And the idea is really to create, I will say, in the next 4 years, an urban data platform using different verticals as a systemic and holistic approach on different, I will say, sub-projects or sub-teams, link, for example, of the nature in the city. What is the impact to integrate the nature in the city with a bio-monitoring and to see how the nature in the city will impact positively the urban health, how we can have a better air quality, how we can decrease the noise in the city to have a better impact on our community, on citizenship. Also, for example, for the waste management and to work in a proper circular economy, how we can be better also on the, I will say, on the use of the energy, on the water, so water edge neutral, how we can be better also for the building environment using local resource constraint and to reuse the materials from a previous and old building. So the idea is really to also on the mobility, as you can see, or for the logistic of the goods or agro-food from rural urban interaction. And the idea is really to collect multiple data, to treat this data in a proper way, to use multiple sensors linked also from this digitalization, and to create this digital twin of the cities in order to set up some predictive or prescriptive model and to take the best or the better, I will say, decision in order to have concrete action on best practices on political decision. So the idea, it's really the spirit of the association is really to bring this huge ecosystem or an ecosystem of multiple stakeholders from different, I will say, public and private and academic sectors, and to think all together of this desirable future and to set a project and to actively to work on project and to have some results. So many thanks for your attention, and I'm really at your disposal to answer to your questions. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Frederic. I would like also to invite our audience to start the questions. And my reflection to your presentation is the interesting potential of the digital turn to think for a better future for our cities. And it's very interesting, the link between the climate change, digitalization, and urbanization that we are doing at EPFL, and also to think about these tools and infrastructures that you bring to the discussion, because as you told, cities should be considered as a hub of innovation for the future. And the role of digitalization, this role of digitalization, we need to work locally and promote new technologies, and also a kind of collective intelligence, making the point also with Thiago and Sara speaks, to act concretely and together, right? And last, I think very interesting the way that you present the question with some kind of predictive models to have these concrete actions, and instead to mitigate the climate change, try to anticipate these problems, these issues, and apply the solutions already in the public policies, in urban planning, and so on. So thank you so much for all the presentations. Now I will start with some questions. We have already the first question from Leonardo Machado, and the questions for Sara. So Sara, that's an interesting connection between heat waves, local global warming, and health issues. And Leonardo asks, regarding asphalt and road surfaces, I've read that a simple solution, such as using slightly brighter materials, is enough to decrease the road temperature in some degrees. do you have examples of the implementation of such measures to help to mitigate the heat waves in the urban environments?
Yes, the cool pavements and the roads, if we adopted measures that can reflect it more, the sun, for example, because asphalt, they absorb more energy, and so we have a higher temperature, and so if we have a cooler pavements, we can have we can decrease a little bit the temperature, which is better, right? But it's not the perfect solution. As I told you in my presentation, is a combination of factors. So we need to think, of course, about the cool pavements, the green areas to reduction these temperatures. A very good example is the Tokyo metropolitan area in Japan. They adopted the cool pavements, and they could see a difference in the temperatures between the normal asphalts and the cool pavements. So yes, it's a good measure, but I think it's not enough.
If Frederic or Thiago have some other tools to apply in the urban environments that you know to mitigate this kind of heat waves, Frederic?
I've got one point to take an example, because perhaps, as you said, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm also a coach and mentor for startups in Switzerland. And I have a typical example of this digitalization. And the startup is called Sparrow City. And they are using multiple sensors on the top of the taxis in Geneva, because taxis making lots of kilometers in Geneva in comparison of a standard, I will say, public transportation going to A to Z and so on. And with multiple sensors from air quality, from the road quality, from the temperature, from humidity, from the noise and sound, they are able to collect in real time what is the picture in the city, and to build this digital twin and to show what is the impact on the urban health, on the quality on the air and so on. And it will help in order to monitor and to discuss about what are the next policy or decision we have to take in Switzerland, for example, about urbanization, how we have to integrate nature in the city, how we have to think about urban planning for the next years and so on. So again, I think today we are in a real amazing world from digitalization, and we can use all these tools in order to have this predictive and prescriptive decision for a better quality of life for everybody in the cities. It's just one example also from digitalization and startups here.
Yeah, Anna, from my side, I think less of an example. I would just like to highlight 2 points here. The first one, connecting closely to what Frédéric just mentioned, that we make a smart and best use of the untapped resources that we have. Because we know oftentimes we underutilize, or we don't utilize at all some of the resources that we have, and have taxis running around and being potentially able to support mapping air quality, noise, temperatures, just one example. The second point I would like to make is that certainly there are some interesting infrastructural solutions for heat, but I would not ignore as well, and oftentimes this is the case, the solutions that do not necessarily conform a business, right? For example, maintaining and sustaining the green space, the tree canopies in streets are oftentimes regarded as a very effective way of keeping the temperature at the right level. And that usually costs very little. It costs much less than repavimenting a whole street, but it gets less traction because there's no business around it. So in one hand, we should not try and be very innovative and smart with the approaches when it comes to the built environment, but also have an eye for interventions and solutions that oftentimes are already there and that we don't need to reinvent or to recreate.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Thiago. Thank you, Frederic and Sara. I will reduce my comments actually, because we are running out of time. We are already at the end of the seminar, but we have still some questions if you agree to answers and to discuss for more 10 minutes. Other question that we have here on our comments, it's this link between academia and society. So the question is, how is the research and data research connected with the urban planning of the cities or of the countries in your experience? Because from one side we have the academia that produce some very cut-edge research on urbanization transition and health problems related also to the climate change. And for the other side, in some ways, we see some practitioners or the public administration that sometimes do not follow these new ideas and this new turn that they would like to do. How about that?
If I may, just one point of view on that, for sure, you are totally right. There is a funnel effect between the fundamental research with applicative research on concrete impact on the economy. So that's why it's really important. And I can take example in Switzerland, but with InnoSwiss, so it's a federal consortium for innovation. They got more than, it's between 300, 400 millions per year in order to invest in applicative research with an impact with economical partners. And to get these grants or financement, you need, in any case, to have the link with public or private sectors on the academics in order to foster, I will say, the market adoption of these new best practices on the impact on the economy. So it's really important for sure. We need to keep fundamental research and to think about the next 10 or 20 years, but also we need to have this applicative research with concrete, I will say, cases on concrete impact for the next 2 and 5 years. Yeah.
And on that, Anna, now I would recall my last argument on the how to transform urban environments. Now, and I think that building alliances is one of them. And building alliances oftentimes is doing things together. It's trying to understand each other's language. It's co-producing things. It's disagreeing oftentimes. And as in any marriage, you have the goods and the bads, and that's how we build it forward. So specifically as regards to research, in addition to what Frédéric mentioned and showed in his presentation, I think more and more we see researchers co-producing their research questions with the communities, with local authorities, with business people. And I think that this is the way to go. If you really want your research to have an impact, you should start from the onset, partnering, collaborating, engaging with those that would help you shape that research and ultimately benefit from the results as well.
I agree with Thiago. I think this communication between academia and the authorities is very important, and we need to stay close of these communications, because nowadays we are seeing a very huge challenge because people, they don't believe in science anymore. And I think the good way that to try people to believe in science is to improve our communication. So then we can discuss more about it and see our research and see how we can actually do something from our results.
And maybe just to add quickly to that, Anna, just to say that on the other hand, we know there's much less evidence, there's much less research on why implementation science works or doesn't work. So we also know there's a call for research, which is part of WHO Urban Health Research Agenda, on evidence on what works and why it works. It should be less about case studies and examples, but also some solid evidence around the successful experiences.
So thank you, Thiago, Frederic, Sara, for your answers. Last question that we have for our Q&A. It's about the Blue City project, Frederic. It's for you the question. Does the Blue City or other project integrate the third sector, NGOs, and civil society organizations in open innovation?
It's a really good question. Everything is in open innovation and open source. So what we will develop will be open for everybody. And in the consortium, we have also connection, for example, with ITU, International Telecommunication Union, as a kind of NGO for sure, because they're really active in not only on the smart cities, but sustainable cities. And we have the public sectors with the Ville de Lausanne, Geneva, and so on. So it's really, again, as Thiago and Sara said, it's really the connecting the dots between the different profile sectors. And for sure, NGOs is really important to integrate them because they are also the key I will say partners in order to diffuse and to disseminate the next generation of decision we have to implement, and especially with ITU on standardization. So it's really important. Yes, and everything is in open innovation. It's really important. And now we are living in an open innovation world. We couldn't keep it for us. We need to open it, and especially from academics to public and private sectors.
So following this wave, do you think are the cities involving with the research centers in your experience, also for Sara in São Paulo, Thiago in Geneva, Frédéric in Lausanne? The research centers are currently involved with the local activities to help to mitigate the climate change.
If I may, just in 2 seconds, but Anna Karla, you know perfectly the topic. Today, for example, between the HRC, so Habitat Research Center, and the ENAC, we open a transdisciplinary grant linked to the academics, to the public sector, and the topic is linked to Hayden River. So the river in the cities, we have to reopen and to see what is the impact on the urban health and so on urbanization. So again, it's really important on HRC, where you are working now since years, is really important to open it to the public sectors and to create this bridge. Yeah.
Absolutely, I can tell from my side the new climates in Lausanne that we started in 2020. It was on seminars trying to make the bridge between academia and society in Lausanne, in Switzerland, to try to discuss and to find new ways to mitigate these impacts of the climate change, but not only, also to think about the quality of soils, the hidden rivers, and other very hot topics that we have to think if we talk about urbanization in transition. So Thiago and Sara?
I can go. And although WHO headquarters is based in Geneva, most of our work happens in low and mid-income cities. And one part of this work that we are doing quite substantially, and I mentioned that in one of my slides, is to develop an implementation framework under the umbrella of WHO's Urban Health Initiative, precisely, Anna, to make it happen, to bring together researchers, the local communities, local authorities, the health sector, the transport sector, the waste, the energy, all together, and to better understand the links between health and urban policies. And I'm very glad to tell you that as part of our activities in the pilot project of Accra, we managed to successfully do that for 3 sectors, four actually, transport, land use, waste, and household energy, with quantitative results on the health impacts of the policy scenarios that the city was planning to put in place, and with already the impact at the policy level, helping to shape the policies for the next years to come. So long story short, to say that, yes, we see it happening, but more than that, we need to work together to develop the frameworks that will allow this to happen at scale in more cities across the globe.
I think concerning São Paulo, we are a little bit behind of the development and the discussion between academia and the authorities about the impacts of climate change. I think we are a little bit behind because we have huge inequalities here. We have such huge problems, and this discussion is put a little bit aside from the others. But I think now we are trying to discuss this more. FAPESP is now putting together all the research about climate change. It could be heat, related to heat or soil or air pollution, and they are trying to discuss more about it and trying to figure a way out to implement measures, but I think in São Paulo we're still behind from this discussion.
Thank you, Sara, Thiago, and Frederic, for these 3 different panoramas of these relations. Thank you for this very fruitful discussion. I invite now Gabriela to conclude our seminar, and thank you for all the attendees and to our listeners that are here with us and putting these very nice questions also to our debate. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure to receive you all to our webinar, and so thank you so much. It was really great to hear all your perspective, and thank you as well all the participants for the important exchange and presence on our channel. Stay connected with Swissnex in Brazil. On our website and in our network, we always show the further projects about arts, different kinds, innovation, education, and technology. On the 21st of July on the UAA platform, you will have the pleasure to hear about the online exhibition on architecture competition in Switzerland. So stay tuned and see you soon. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao, bye-bye.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Bye-bye.